Welcome to Studio Chatter, everybody. I'm Craig Reeves, and y'all are not going to want to miss this one. So my guest today is none other than the talented producer and musician Nydia. Nydia is a fast rising star in the instrumental lo-fi and chill hop scene. Their recent single, Sunspots, which is a collaboration with the high-profile producer in the scene known as Nobuddy, has garnered over 200,000 plays on Spotify. I fell in love with the track instantly and became a fan, and I know you will as well. You should also check out Nydia's latest album, Slow Burn, while you're at it, and be on the lookout for their next release coming in October. I wanted to bring Nydia on because they have a lot, and I mean a lot, to say about the recent problems within the lo-fi music scene, such as cultural appropriation, sexism, and them just being out of pocket on a lot of things. Lo-Fi Records, one of the world's largest lo-fi music labels, recently put out a compilation of, quote, Asian-themed lo-fi beats that has gotten a ton of backlash within the scene from both fans and fellow musicians alike. Nydia has really been leading the opposition in this regard, so I gave them carte blanche to go in, and go in they did. So without further ado, you all buckle up and let's get to it. Nydia, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing wonderful. So thank you for doing this. I really appreciate you doing this. I actually came to know you from prepping for another interview that I had on this podcast with a good friend of mine named Sync.exe. Mm-hmm. And Sync.exe is a very talented producer. He does kind of chill hop and lo-fi music as well. Mm-hmm. And while I was doing research for the interview with him, I came across a very cool track that you did called Sunspots. Mm-hmm. And you did that track with a character by the name of Nobuddy. And I fell in love with the track. I really liked it a lot. And I tried to find out who Nobuddy was, but I didn't find any information on him. I definitely encourage everybody to go check out Sunspots by Nydia. It's a beautiful track. How did you come to work with Nobuddy?
So Nobuddy is Jamie Henwood's alias. He is a very talented producer and singer. I believe he just released a tape, like a full tape, like his first album, that features him singing, and he's a really good instrumentalist. I believe he does guitar, piano, a few other instruments. So we had been friends on, social media and stuff for a while, and he approached me with the idea to collab. He sent me some stems, and I kind of just worked around that. We went back and forth for a little bit, and then we released it, and it's doing really well. I was kind of surprised at how well it's doing. I think it's probably one of the most played tracks I have out there right now.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the most popular. It's gotten over like 200,000 plays on Spotify. Mm-hmm. And what's really impressive about you is that you haven't been producing forever. You started producing in 2018. Is that correct?
Yeah, 2018. Mm-hmm.
And you already are seeing some of your tracks get hundreds of thousands of plays on Spotify. So that's really impressive.
Thank you. Yeah, I played piano since I was about 7 years old, went to school for it and everything. So I do have a little bit of a musical background already, but I really didn't start actually producing until, I want to say it was like the end of high school. I was doing Final Fantasy and like video game covers and kind of learning how to use FL. But then I dropped it for a little while, and I didn't really start picking it up until about the end of 2018.
Oh, nice. So you use FL Studio?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, nice. So do you like collabing with other producers?
I do. Yeah, I do feel that it is kind of, it's kind of hard to find someone that you really mesh with well, that actually likes the stuff that you send over to them. Because I find a lot of times when people ask me to collab, they'll send me stems or pieces to use. And it's like, well, I don't really know how to work with this. And I feel that goes the other way around with me sending other people stuff. It's just like, I find someone, I really want to work with them, but nothing we're really playing around with is really working out well. And then we kind of just drop it and never talk to each other again.
Well, I have to do this because these are my friends and they've been on the show, but I definitely would encourage you to collab with sync.exe. And I would definitely encourage you to collab with Josiah Soren, who's also been on the show, as well as Jay Herlock and Imagiro. So every one of those people are my friends and I have to plug them. It's kind of what I have to do. So have you thought about working with vocalists?
I have worked with a few vocalists before, and I really, really love that. I love when someone adds vocals to one of my tracks. It just makes it feel like it's just this whole new, complete thing with so much energy into it. So I do love working with vocalists. I'm really horrible at mixing, though. Like, just adding vocals on top of a track myself is not my forte, so I'd rather send that off to someone else. But
it's a different discipline, isn't it? Working with vocals.
It definitely is, for sure.
Yeah. So you had an album that you released this year. It was called Slow Burn. And I listened to the album. I got to listen to it and I liked it. I really liked it a lot. And you have a very quick workflow because you released 3 albums last year and then 3 albums the year before that. How long does it usually take you to finish a track? I can't imagine that it takes very long at all.
It kind of just depends on what I can find and what I can piece together. I'm very vocal about the fact that I use Splice. I feel like Splice is kind of villainized a little bit just because it can be really easy for people to just drag and drop. I don't like to do that per se. I like to actually go in there, find samples, and really, really mess around with them to make it sound completely different than just stock sounds. Sometimes it takes me, up to a week until I'm really happy with something. And sometimes it just maybe might take a few hours. So it really just depends. It depends on how much time I'm willing to put in until I'm really, really, really satisfied with something. Not to say that I just put out whatever, but I mean, it just depends on the sounds themselves that I find to use.
Very nice. Very nice. So here's my take on the whole Splice thing. Okay. Because I actually have a lot of experience in producing. I've been producing since I was 16. I'm 37 now. So that's over 20 years.
Yeah.
And I wish that something like Splice was around when I was 17. And I think that too many producers get too much shit for using Splice. I really do. It's like the samples are there for you to use. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of the Neptunes way back in the day when they were still using the Korg Triton. They got shit by other producers for using the sounds in the Triton because the Triton was very popular at the time. And they got a lot of shit for using the sounds in the Triton. Oh, that's what everybody else is using. And it was at the time. I mean, in the early 2000s, the Triton became so ubiquitous that by the mid 2000s, you couldn't use it because like all the sounds had been just done to death.
Right.
But the thing is, it's like, you're never going to see that with Splice because there's always new libraries, new sample packs, new everything being made. And I just kind of think it's odd and kind of pretentious that producers would give you and other producers shit for using technology.
It's
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very gatekeepy. Unfortunately, you're always going to see that in communities around music production as a whole. I feel you're never going to make everyone completely happy. But, at the end of the day, the general audience isn't going to know that you used a Splice sample unless they're another producer that has heard that specific sample. So I just think that, it really doesn't fucking matter.
It doesn't. And here's the thing, right? You literally took the thought out of my head just now. Like, who cares? Because here's the deal, right? The way I look at it is this, okay? People at a coffee shop or at a hotel who are enjoying Nydia's music aren't going to care if they're using Splice.
It's all passive listening, yeah.
They're not going to care. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's like music nerds don't buy shit. It's like if you're making music for music nerds, oh, you used Splice. Oh, who cares? You know what I'm saying? It's like, music nerds don't go to concerts. Music nerds don't spend money. I don't make music for other producers. I make music for people. Now, I'm not saying producers aren't people. I'm just saying, I make music for the general public, okay? I don't care if you knew where my sample came from. I don't care if you knew where I got that kick from. Yeah, I got it from Splice. So what? Fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't care. I honestly don't care. And because again, I care about the people that are actually paying for my music, the people who are actually buying my music, not people who are just going to listen to it and look at me as competition. You know what I'm saying? Because, I mean, this was the same shit that people got for sampling music. You literally now have lo-fi kids, and I know that term has become kind of controversial, but you have lo-fi kids crapping on people for sampling, and they call themselves hip-hop. It's like, where do you think hip hop came from? Sampling.
And that's the other part too, is that like, if you want to talk about the morality of sampling and, crediting the original artists and everything like that, it's like, okay, well, if you're going to give me shit for using Splice, for using licenses that I pay for, I'm not stealing from anyone. I'm not sampling from Miles Davis and not paying his estate money or anything like that. Like, I am using and paying for a service so that I can do my best to, not get fucking sued. And you're going to give me shit for that. It's like, so then what do you want me to do? Like, I can't afford to be paying thousands of dollars to use sample a song back from like Elvis or someone famous that'll sue the shit out of me for thousands of dollars. Like,
it'll be more than thousands.
I can't afford that, and sometimes I feel like that's too big of a risk. And I know there's a lot of gray area with that too, on what you can and can't get away with. I just would rather just not. I'd rather just do it the safest route that I can, which would be using Splice samples, using Arcade, using chords, using my Arturia. I do things by hand still. I do, use my skills as a pianist, but I also try to just do my best to make sure that at the end of the day, I'm not doing anything illegal that's going to get me in trouble.
There you go. And the funny thing is people who are in this community, they idolize Nydia Best and J Dilla. It's like they sampled. J Dilla sampled. J Dilla was a master sampler, right? Nydia Best sampled. Pete Rock sampled. I mean, all these guys sampled.
I completely agree. There's definitely roots in this that a lot of people tend to overlook, and that is a really big problem in lo-fi, especially
well, they don't know
now.
The history. That's really what that is.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's like they probably don't even know who Large Professor is or who Primo is. They probably don't even know who, they probably don't know who J Dilla is, to be honest with you. They've probably heard the name, but they don't know who he is.
Or they've only listened to Donuts and that's it.
I know, right? And what's funny is that, this whole balking at technology goes all the way back. I mean, there was a time where people literally thought using VSTs was cheating, right? People were like, oh, you use VSTs, haha, oh, you're cheating. I mean, there was a point where people thought that you were cheating using digital audio workstations, right? Because people used to record to tape and stuff. Dude, that was one of my mentors, somebody who passed away in January, actually from COVID of all things. He was an A&R at Motown, and he was telling me one time about how he was in a studio session with a producer, and they were using, you know, Pro Tools, because, you know, at the time Pro Tools was new. This was in the 90s, and Pro Tools was like the new thing, and hard drive recording was this new thing, right? And I remember he was telling me that this producer didn't want to work with them because they thought that they were not real producers because they weren't recording to tape. You know what I mean? Like, this is how stupid this is. And in my opinion, it's like, do music fans care? It's like, if I'm producing, my job is to make the best music possible. And so the easiest path to doing that, I'm going to take. If I can find a Splice loop that'll do the work for me, I'm going to do that. Who cares? Yeah. I mean, that's my attitude.
Yeah, I do feel the exact same way. I think that people are always going to find a way to shit on what they feel is a shortcut before they even try to understand why it's a thing to begin with and why it's helpful and why people are using it.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed that from the time that you started producing, from 2018. So I listened to all of your music. I went through and listened to it, all of it, just in preparation for this discussion that we're having. And one of the things that I really noticed is from 2019 up until now, that's not a long time, but I noticed that, your earlier works, like your earlier albums, they were very high quality. They sounded great, but they were more like jazz influence. They had kind of like a jazz hop, chill hop influence, kind of reminded me of sync.exe a little bit. And now your newer stuff has more of an eclectic influence, right? Like you seem to have found your own sound. And the stuff that you were doing earlier, it kind of sounded more like the other stuff that was out at that time. Right. Have you noticed that as well?
I do definitely think that I have shifted kind of more towards like a more ambient sound, using more pads, more synth, kind of like that. And that's just because I just feel like you sound like Nydia now rather than like every other lo-fi artist, you know what I mean? And I think that's just because when I started out producing, I wasn't even making lo-fi in general. I was making synthwave. I was trying to make vaporwave. I was making really, like house kind of influenced stuff. And then I kind of got into lo-fi, started listening more to like the, 2016 to 2018 kind of lo-fi, and really liked it. And I was like, okay, I want to try to go for that. And I tried to emulate it the best that I can. And I think that a lot of my earlier stuff was just me trying to do that. And now that I've kind of established myself a bit more, I'm kind of just finding that I like things that are not like that anymore.
So, I mean, you've worked with a lot of the same labels, mainly Birdhouse. Are they responding well to your change in sound?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten any complaints from them about it. I'm not really working with them anymore, but yeah, they didn't seem to really have any complaints with my stuff. Everything that I sent over to them that they released, they really liked. So, yeah. Nice.
So you're working on a new album, right?
Yeah, I just sent it over. It's being released through my friend, through Third Stone Sounds, and that's going to be coming out October 15th.
Nice. All right, everybody, look out for that one. October 15th, Nydia's new album is going to be coming out. So here's the deal, Nydia. You are quite active on social media. You are quite the fighter on social media. You are very outspoken on social media. Personally, here's my thing. I honestly, I don't know if my soul is too old or not, but I don't have the head for social media. It's just, I don't have the head for it. It to me feels like a cesspool. It does.
Right.
And, the problems I have with social media is, first of all, everybody comes across very different from the way they are. I mean, some of the people who come across as so cool on social media have been some of the most arrogant people I've ever met in my life. And then people who come across as aggressive or crazy on social media are some of the loveliest people when you talk to them in person. And to me, it's like bridges can be burned without you knowing about it. I mean, I can't even tell you how many times people have just unfriended me on Facebook or unfollowed me on Twitter because of something I tweeted that they misconstrued or just something. And, just I believe that if that person and I would have, whatever problem that person had with me, it's like if they would have just came to me and we would have had a conversation about the issue, I don't think they would have unfollowed me. I don't think they would have unfriended me. I don't think they would have, blocked me or whatever the case is. People who I am fans of just block me for no reason. It's like, I feel kind of hurt about that sometimes, and it's like, and sometimes they don't even tell you, right? Yeah. Because, it's like, I mean, no offense, I'm pretty sure you get blocked all the time.
Oh, yeah, hell yeah.
But it's like, they won't tell you why they blocked you. It's like, what did I do? And so I constantly feel like I'm walking on eggshells on Twitter in particular, right? Because I'm afraid that something I'm going to tweet is going to offend somebody or make somebody mad, because you can't have a nuanced opinion, right? I mean, you can't have a nuanced opinion. If I tweet, it's like, I understand why people like Taylor Swift or whoever, people complain that Taylor Swift she doesn't get political on Twitter or whatever. I understand why a lot of people like The Rock or whatever, tweet fluff, because it's like, if you tweet anything, if you have a stance on anything, you're going to alienate millions of people. It's stressful as hell. It really is.
Yeah, for sure. I kind of really don't give a fuck anymore about what people really, as far as getting blocked or anything like that. Like, in my opinion, nobody's obligated to follow me on social media. You're not obligated to stay my friend in real life in social media. And if you don't like what I have to say, that's fine. You don't have to listen to me. That's completely up to you. That's your time. That's your mental health. And you take care of yourself first. But I feel that one of the reasons why I'm so vocal on social media is just because it's hard not to be in a white male dominated scene, especially in lo-fi. And I feel that a lot of the women in the lo-fi hip hop community were kind of shitted on, like, we're not really given a lot of spotlight. If we are, it's kind of performative, it's kind of just like, a blogger.
Tokenized.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been the token girl in so many different collectives, and it's just like, there's a difference between like actually wanting me there and just placing me there just so that you could say you have a girl in your label, So I just feel that a lot of people, especially men, I've just noticed that on social media particularly, they treat it like a locker room because they feel that, it's only men that are there. And I'm talking specifically on Twitter from what I see just on music social media, like on music Twitter. A lot of guys just tweet bullshit from their balls, just, talking talking about, just microaggressions towards women in general, thinking that other women aren't in these scenes and aren't going to see it. And then when you call them out on it, you kind of get gaslit so that they can put you back in your place or whatever they feel like doing. And it's bullshit, like, I feel that if you're going to be on social media, you shouldn't be tweeting out, how much you hate when women do this, or, oh, I hate women. And just just all this misogynistic crap. Girls can't do this. Girls only do this. They only eat hot chips and lie, you know, whatever that stuff is. And it's just, it's ridiculous. And I feel like one of the reasons why I am so vocal is just because from the very beginning that I started producing and I actually started putting myself out there, made a Twitter and whatnot, I got told within the first few weeks by some random dude that made type beats to go back to putting on makeup because I'm not good at producing. And I'm like, who the fuck are you? You know, like, why is that the first thing that comes out of your mouth when you see that I'm, you know, not a man, is that I should go back to doing feminine things. So I've definitely had to grow a pair in that sense and kind of just stand my ground as someone that's not a male in a male-dominated scene.
Wow. Okay. There is a lot to unpack there. I definitely understand. Okay. So a couple of things that you brought up. You brought up that you face microaggressions. So I want to try to give my best definition of what a microaggression is to the audience who may not know. A microaggression, as far as I understand it, is a statement made that doesn't necessarily have to be a direct attack. That would be an overt aggression. But it's a statement that reflects some level of sexism or racism or something in you. So, for instance, if I were to say, you know, you are really good at making beats, but you're really pretty though, okay, that would be a microaggression because it suggests that I don't think that a pretty girl can make beats, that sort of thing. Is that right? Or
Yeah, it's kind of just like, I think, like, for one example that I was told was like, hey, I like your beats. Do you think I could, like, maybe get some nudes too? Or just, you know, something around that line. Like you're kind of just, you're talking to me, you're giving me a compliment. I think that you're talking about my music, but then you bring in something regarding my gender about it and kind of just like put that in there when it's not really needed or pertaining to the conversation. Like,
oh, you really make beats. You're really good for a girl. Is that kind of?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a cesspool. It really can be. I would just say that a lot of times people got to take a break from social media. They really do. And don't use, for crying out loud, please do not use social media as a replacement for real conversation. One of the things that really concerns me about young people today, and I know I'm going to sound really old when I say young people today, is kids today really have become uncomfortable with real-time conversation. I literally have worked with people who, if I have an issue with them and I'm like, okay, can we talk about this on FaceTime if we can't talk in person, or talk on the phone if we can't talk on, in person? They don't want to do that. Like, I had a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, her management deal ended over text. That is tragic. It's like,
that's awful.
It's like people will break up with folks over text. It's like people are afraid to talk to each other and resolve issues the way humans have done it. Since humans have walked the earth, you're not going to resolve anything. Me personally, if I have an issue with you, okay, like if I have an issue with anybody that I work with, I would much rather not talk about it at all until they have time to talk with me in person, on the phone, or on FaceTime.
Right.
I want to talk in real time with somebody. Be real with me. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people have gravitated to social media, particularly Twitter, because you mentioned a lot of these guys that say, send me nudes and all that kind of stuff, and all the sexism that you face. They're probably not really like that. Okay.
Right.
They're probably just showing out. You know what I mean? Because everybody has to beat up on the girl. Okay. That's what it is. All right. And I'll say, you're attractive. And so guys are going to see that not only are you better than them at making beats, but you're the girl they couldn't have in high school. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is. No, that's a real deal. That's a real thing. Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's 2 levels of insecurity. You know what I'm saying? That's 2 levels of male insecurity there. And so I really think that's a big part of it. They're just showing out for their friends. They wouldn't do that if you were talking to them in person. They wouldn't say that to your face. Right. For sure. You know what I'm saying? And so social media itself is very performative. People can put on this fake front of themselves. And a lot of the times people I work with, who I choose not to work with again, by the way, will not want to communicate me. Like if I'm having an issue with them, if there's an issue that I have, I say, all right, you know what? Let's resolve this. Call me. Or, let's FaceTime. No, I don't want to do that. Let's just text. I'm like, you know what? Fuck you. You know what I'm saying? Like, seriously. I mean, I don't play that shit. I really don't. I mean, if you don't want to talk to me in person, over the phone, or face to face in real time, one of the reasons why I did this podcast, one of the reasons why I did it was because it's a long form show. I mean, it's a long form podcast, right? If you're talking to me for an hour, it's going to be hard to fake it. You can't fake it for an hour. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're talking for an hour, you can't fake that shit. If it's like some contrived 10-minute interview, you can give contrived answers. You can give, your answers that you give in every interview. But if we're having like a conversation, you're not going to be able to fake it.
Yeah, exactly. I completely feel you. And I think the lack of tone through text kind of just like sets people off. I've seen on Twitter that, there are people that will use tone indicators, like they'll put like a slash like sarcasm or slash joking just so they can try to like, not get things misconstrued. But it's still not the same as talking to someone and hearing their voice or seeing their face. Those are interactions that really can't be replaced.
Absolutely. So there is a label called LoFi Records, and this label is the label associated with the very famous Lo-Fi Girl YouTube channel. They put out a compilation called Soothing Breeze that incorporated, now this is their words, the Asian sound into lo-fi hip hop. That this is their words, not mine. Okay. The very first thing that I thought was, this has to be a joke. It was the first thing I thought. And so I listened to it. It's nice. It's some nice music. It doesn't sound Asian to me. I'm sorry. Because when I think Asian, because first of all, it doesn't sound like you know what it sounds like to me? It sounds like the same lo-fi stuff that I hear with world instrument sample libraries. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what it sounds like. Okay, they put like a shakuhachi in there, and they put like some kind of kodo in there or something, and they put some percussion in there from Japan or whatever, like a taiko drum here and there. And look, I am a musicologist. I've studied music for a long time. I know what music from around the world sounds like. I've studied music from 6 continents, okay? And here's the big part of it. Here's the part that really nobody's talking about. Asia is a big-ass continent. Okay, so which Asian sound are they talking about? Because I didn't hear India. I didn't hear sitars and tablas. Okay, what about Korea? I didn't hear Korea. I didn't hear Southeast Asia. I didn't hear Indonesia gamelan music. I didn't hear Middle Eastern music. Okay, but I know what they're talking about. It's Chinese and Japanese, because that's all of Asia to a lot of these people in this lo-fi community, right?
Yeah. Yeah, basically. I believe.
Let's just keep it a stack. I mean, again, when I see Asian music, okay, I'm going to hear India, I'm going to hear the Middle East, I'm going to hear Armenia, I'm going to hear Mongolian music, I'm going to hear Southeast Asian music. Come on. I mean, this is a joke. It's a joke.
Yeah, there were like 7 non-Asian producers, and I believe 1 Asian producer that was a feature on one of those songs. And
what nationality?
I believe he's Korean, Softy, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, so as you know, I'm full transparency, I'm a white Latina, so I have never experienced racism, and I will never experience racism as someone who is Asian or Black or, you know, anything other than white. That's just not my lane. But I will say that LoFi Girl has been doing fuck shit for a long time because what really got me about all of that was that they said that their decisions were the key to keeping the genre alive. And I feel that that's such bullshit because that label is ran by a French marketing major named Dimitri. What the fuck does he know about keeping hip hop in general alive? I feel that, and again, you know, I'm white, so I just think that it's really not in the hands of white people to decide what is the betterment of hip hop. And no matter what it is, you call it lo-fi hip hop, it's still hip hop. Boom bap is still hip hop. Chill hop is still hip hop, and which was created at the hands of Black artists. And that's just an undeniable fact. And a lot of people were really offended at the fact that there's just so much cultural appropriation going on, whether it's from, you know, Black artists or the Asian community, whichever culture it is. You know, you're having this whole white ran label put their sticker on it and sell it and not give anyone their their credits. And that's fucked up, and people are getting tired of it.
Why even put together this compilation if they couldn't get artists from Asia on?
No, see, that's the thing. Now, I don't know if this is a rumor or not, but I did read this from one of the artists that was on that comp that said that there were about 10 to 15 Asian artists that did submit that did not get chosen because their track apparently did not fit the vibe or whatever the fuck excuse they had.
So, okay, if they didn't think that the artists from Asia were good enough, it still begs the question. I mean, look, this is a label. Lo-Fi Girl is huge. It's the biggest user-curated playlist on Spotify, okay? Mm-hmm. And they have a very large YouTube channel. They have the resources to scout artists from the continent of Asia. Mm-hmm. Again, they didn't have representation of South Asia. They didn't have representation of Southeast Asia. They didn't have representation from the Middle East. That's part of Asia, okay? When I think of Asia, I think of all of it, all right? I don't just think of Japan. I don't just think of China, which, I mean, again, it doesn't even really sound Japanese to me. Like, I listen to it, it doesn't sound Japanese. And so, again, if they wanted to put together a playlist or a compilation of music that celebrated Asian culture, that sounds fine to me. It sounds great. I have no problem with that. I wouldn't have a problem if they wanted to put together, you know, a compilation of Malian music. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have a problem with that. My ancestors are from Mali. And so it's kind of like, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. I kind of like that. I think it was cool, no matter what race the people are, but they'd have to study it. It's very clear that they really didn't do that because, again, it's like when I saw that, I'm like, okay, which Asian culture are you talking about? You know what I'm saying? Like, Asia's very diverse.
Right.
But of course, it's like, well, it's gonna be what they see as Asian. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's just what it is.
Right, exactly. And like one of my friends had said, you know, it's not even like authentic Asian like influences, like you're saying. Like, basically it's just like a pseudo cultural kind of thing that comes from white people who watched anime a few times and like view Asia as like the monolith.
What's up with the fetish of anime of these people?
Like,
Lo-Fi Girl herself is like an anime character.
Yeah,
what is up with that?
It's basically like Studio Ghibli core in a sense. I really don't know fully the background of when those two kind of like aesthetics of like, you know, like hip hop and anime kind of combined.
Well, that's because the people who engage in doing that kind of music are anime fans. Right. They like anime. And look, I like anime too. So I'm not trashing anime. It just seems odd that they think Asia is just anime. And it's like, no, it's not. But I mean, I just find it odd that they would create this compilation and they don't feel like they have any Asians who they think would be good. Now, obviously, we haven't heard the submissions from the people from Asia, so I don't want to say that they should have been on or shouldn't have been on, but it's kind of like, if you don't have, like, if your roster, because they have a network, I'm sure, of producers they go to. Yeah. And if you don't have any producers in your Rolodex from Asia, then why put together a compilation like that? You know what I mean? Exactly. It just seems strange to me that they would do this. Right.
Yeah, it's really weird. And I feel like a lot of people got even more angry at the fact that they doubled down. So, they announced this in a 2-part Instagram post. The first part, people were like, what the fuck? This is awful. What are you doing? And then they posted a part 2.
Oh my God, I did see that.
Yeah, continuing speaking about the project. And then they put a comment in that saying like, hey, we read all of your comments and just letting you know we're still going to be doing this and we're not taking this down and fuck you, basically. So I think that's what got people even more pissed off is just, like you said, this is pretty much the biggest lo-fi label there is out there, making the most money, having the most connections to Spotify to make artists basically thousands of dollars with just one track. And they're basically telling their audience of producers, people who are making this shit, that they don't care about their criticism. And I feel that that's just, it's really a huge slap in the face. And it's one of the reasons why I have been wanting to just get out from using the lo-fi label as a whole, because I just feel like at this point it's colonization in music. It's white colonization in music, I feel like. And if that's a bit too far, I'm sorry. It just that's the way that I've been feeling about that, is just that it's become disrespectful in a sense.
Here's my take on it. I mean, this was clearly marketed toward white people. I mean, the compilation was marketed toward white people who really don't know anything about music from the continent of Asia. And so they could get away with kind of this pseudo-Asian music because their audience probably, they don't think, would know better. Now, obviously, that proved to be false because a lot of people who are their fans are kind of turning on them, but they thought, well, look, our audience are just white anime nerds. And so, we can have a bunch of white people put together some pseudo-Asian music and pass it off as Asian. And they were literally talking about how we're trying to make this as authentic Asian as possible. And it's like, anybody who studied any Asian music, I'm not an expert on Asian music, but I listened to it and the very first thing I thought was, this shit ain't Asian. You know what I'm saying? Like I've listened to music from China. I've listened to music from Japan. I've listened to music from India. Okay. I've listened to music from, the Middle East. This doesn't sound like music from any of those regions of the world. All right. And so you brought up cultural appropriation. That's a very interesting term, isn't it?
Yeah.
So cultural appropriation is when somebody adopts a cultural norm in a way that is offensive to the people that originated the culture, such as, for instance, wearing Native American attire for Halloween. Now, the reason why wearing the attire of indigenous people for Halloween is offensive is because people who are indigenous never intended for their dress to be used as a costume for a holiday they don't celebrate. You know what I'm saying? And so white people performing music that they didn't originate, that itself is fine, right? I mean, if that was cultural appropriation, I mean, white people wouldn't be able to do any music at all in pop music, Beethoven. Right? That would, I mean, that and like country music, maybe, but it's when, people are doing something in a way that is not actually, it's not okay with the people that originated it, right?
Right.
And that really is up to the people who originated that culture to decide. You know what I'm saying? Like, Black artists sampled classical music, right? Black artists have sampled Beethoven, they've sampled Mozart. And, people in the classical music world had no problem with that because it helped classical music, right? Mm-hmm. Sampling Mozart helped people learn Mozart. It helped people to, when they started sampling jazz music, people got into jazz. You know what I'm saying? When people started sampling the Rolling Stones, for instance, people got into the Rolling Stones. So it actually helps the people who started the culture to sample. But, when you have, and you brought up colonization, when you have people decide to adopt hip hop culture and I guess put it together in a way that appeals to white people. Because let's be real. I mean, like if you listen to lo-fi, it doesn't really sound like rap music. Like if you listen to like old school hip hop from like the 90s, like Nas or people like that or Biggie, lo-fi doesn't really sound like that. So it's kind of like they took hip hop and they kind of made it into something that appeals to white people. They got rid of the lyrics. They made it more easy sounding because a lot of the old school hip hop was aggressive, right? KRS-One was aggressive. Nas was aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay, these are aggressive artists. Biggie Smalls was aggressive. Okay, and so they took old school hip hop and they made it less rugged, which is why they kind of gravitated to Jay Dilla because Jay Dilla's music was just naturally less aggressive. You know what I'm saying? And so they gravitated toward him. And what ended up happening though is that it became its own genre. They called it lo-fi, right? And now it's like, if you're a Black person, if you're going to be a lo-fi artist, acceptable lo-fi is the way white people do it. Yeah. That is straight up gentrification. That's what happened to rock music.
Basically, yes. I definitely think that it warrants deeper look into like the continuum of Black music throughout American history and how different groups have interacted with it, and not just Black music, but music from different cultures in general. And it's just, you have to show like a genuine, you have to, if you're going to be, basically, if you're going to be walking into someone's house, be a respectable guest. Don't just kick them out of their bedroom and, change the locks, which is, I feel like is what lo-fi is leaning towards, is just kicking everyone else out, even the people who have built that house and kind of just taking it and running with it and naming it their own, which is why I said, colonization, because it genuinely, for a lot of people that I've spoken with, that's what it feels like to them. And again, I'm white, so I really can't.
Well, no, you actually, you brought up a very good point because there were artists from Asia. Now, I don't know where they were from in Asia, but there were artists from Asia who didn't make the compilation. Now, to be fair to Lo-Fi Records, we don't know why they didn't make the compilation, but do you think that it could be possible that their music didn't fit what these white people thought was Asian? Imagine like if you had an think about it. Like if you had an East Indian decide to send some, okay. So if you have somebody like an East Indian says, okay, great, let's do some Asian music. Well, Asian to that person, he's going to break out his sitar, you know, he's going to play some Indian music because to him, that's Asian.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And so, you know, the East Indian's going to send his music to this lo-fi records, and they're going to be like, you know what? We asked for Asian music, not music from the Indian subcontinent. Well, the Indian subcontinent, the last time I checked, was in Asia. Now, look, I don't know if that happened. All right. I don't know. Or if like a Japanese person was told, hey, you know what? I'm going to try to make some music from, you know, that's inspired by my culture. But then he sends something to them that isn't stereotypically, quote, Asian in their mind. And therefore, it's kind of like this. If they wanted to make let's say if there was like a movie studio that wanted to make a film about Black culture, okay? And so I decide to send them a script. And in the script, it's people just acting normal and, you know, just doing normal stuff. And they're like, you know, where's the twerking? Where's the, you know what I'm saying? It's like,
you're being too much.
I don't know, man. It's like, I maybe that's what happened. Again, we don't know because we don't know why these Asian artists didn't make the compilation, but I don't know. There's a chance that could be the reason.
Yeah. It's fucked. I wish that they would have just given Asian people the chance to just voice their own cultural roots, or
at least they could have explained why there weren't Asian artists on the compilation. They didn't do that.
No, all they did was just double down on why they're the main voice of lo-fi and make all the decisions.
And the fact that they did not see this would be a problem is tone deaf as hell. It's like, do you not? Okay. All right, I'm at a loss for words, which I never am. But if they took a compilation of African inspired beats, yet there were no Black people, I guarantee you they would have thought, you know what? We don't have any Black people on here, yet we're making African inspired shit. I mean, do they not? I mean, how could you?
Yeah, I think DiBiase and I were talking about that. Like, he was like, what's next? What are they going to colonize next? I said, probably African music, if we're being completely honest.
Oh, God. We spoke it into existence, Nydia. We spoke it into existence. I hope they don't listen to this shit because we're going to give them ideas.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's a lot of people are mad. And, you know, like I said, you know, white person here. But as far as other forms of representation go, I've never actually seen them even feature any female artists. I've never seen them do an all-female comp. If they have, I hope they didn't disguise, you know, cis white men behind it all like they did with this. But it's just, there's definitely a lack of representation for a lot of minority groups here. And it's, you know, whether it's racial or ethnical or, you know, male, female, non-binary. It's a very white male dominated scene, and I am sick of it. And I'm kind of just wrapping up my ends here so I can be done with it.
So every episode of this podcast, we ask the same question. What is the origin story? How did Nydia go from a little kid eating Eggo waffles on Saturday morning, watching cartoons, to the talented producer we see today? Now, I don't know if you ate Eggo waffles on Saturday morning to watch cartoons. I sure as hell did, but I don't know if you did.
I don't think I had Eggos as a child. No, it was more like chorizo and eggs, but
oh, okay. Yeah.
Well, I mean, like I said, I was raised by my grandma. She's from Mexico. She loved music, and I always had kind of like an ear for music. I would hear a tune and I'd go, and she had this little Casio from the 80s that she had in the room. And I'd turn it on and I'd, play with my finger and try to recreate a sound that I heard. And she was like, hey, you kind of got a knack for that. Let's put you in after school classes for piano. And so I did that up until I was 18. And unfortunately, once you turned 18, it was like, all right, well, you're not getting these classes anymore, but you can go to university on a scholarship. And I tried to do that for a little bit, but it's way
Where'd you go?
I was gonna go to ASU for music to
Great
study.
school.
Yeah, to study piano. But then, for when I was getting ready and practicing and getting ready to audition, I was playing one of my pieces. I think it was Tchaikovsky. No, it was a Chopin piece. And I messed up. I got frustrated. I was taking a break. And then I heard someone in the next room play it perfectly. And it just pissed me off so bad. I ran out of there. I was like, fuck this. I'm not doing this anymore. And I really was just done with music. And I really didn't want anything to do with it for a while. And I don't know, I started talking to people on social media, and I saw, I befriended a couple of people that were producers, and just seeing how much love they put into sampling and just taking one sound and making it into something completely different with their own personal taste to it. Like, I loved that. I would go to my friend's house and hang out with him in his shed, smoking weed and just watching him just take an 80s track and just flip it into a hip hop sounding track and just being like, wow, I want to learn how to do this. And so, I tried my hand at it and I fell in love with it, and that's kind of how it happened.
So you got into production by just watching other people do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is very interesting. So whoever that friend was, we should thank him because he got you into music. So hat tip to whoever that person was, you watched. Arthur, if you're listening to this, my friend, thank you, because Nydia has blessed the world with such great music. Now, one of the things you kind of mentioned is this idea of lo-fi. Do you think that lo-fi is hip hop? I know you had said earlier that it was, but I want to challenge you on that. Is lo-fi really hip hop at the end of the day? Because I know a lot of hip hop heads, right? I mean, I grew up in the 90s, okay? And I started producing in the 2000s. And I came into contact with a lot of hip hop heads because when I first started producing, I started off in the MPC 3000. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I started off in the MPC 3000 and I had a turntable and everything. And I knew a lot of hip hop heads. And most hip hop heads I know don't even know what lo-fi is.
Right. And I feel so hip hop, lo-fi hip hop, when it first started out, and I'm talking Tompa Beats, Beside You, Ginseng, Eerie, those producers back 4, 5, 6 years ago, that was a very different sound than what it is now. You were talking more sample based, more gritty sounding, more, hard knocking kind of drums. Well, not Tompa Beats per se. He was more of the easy listening kind of stuff, but Beside You did a lot of more of that gritty kind of lo-fi. It's definitely evolved over time. It's definitely changed. The lo-fi that you hear now is really
basically
clean.
It's wider. It's wider.
It's wider. It's very clean. They mix, they master it well. It doesn't just sound like they just put
Yeah, and really to me there's nothing wrong with making it wider as long as there is still a space for the way Black people do it.
Right.
I mean, which obviously there is. I mean, hip hop is the biggest, most profitable genre of music there is, but it's don't keep people who originated it out. You
right.
said earlier, don't kick people out of the house. You know what I'm saying? You can make Eminem makes rap for white people. I mean, really, that's what he does. And look, there's nothing wrong with that because Eminem is not kicking Black people out of the house.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And I know that term boom bap is thrown around a lot, but when I think of boom bap, I immediately think of like Primo and Pete Rock and Large Professor and Marley Marl and LL Cool J and Wu-Tang and, you know, KRS-One and people like that. I don't really think of lo-fi. I just don't. Like, it doesn't, because I grew up in that era. I grew up in the 90s. I grew up listening to like boom bap, you know? So it's like, to me, I know what boom bap is for real. You know what I mean? And so I understand a lot of people who are well-intentioned will say, oh, call it boom bap. Well, it's not really boom bap, isn't it?
Right. No, it's definitely its own thing for sure. It's separate from boom bap. I feel like it is under the hip hop umbrella, but it is definitely its own route. You know, that kind of veers off from the hip hop umbrella. And I think that, you know, when you're, and I feel like that's why a lot of like artists, particularly Black artists, I've really rarely seen a Black artist call themselves a lo-fi hip hop artist. And I feel like that's because it's all just hip hop, you know, and kind of like putting yourself into this one specific tiny little stream from something that's bigger than that is kind of limiting yourself, you know, and limiting your audience and what you can do. And if you just say, you know, I just make beats, then that's, you know, that's fine because that's you do. But if you specifically say like, I make lo-fi hip hop, well, then, you know, not everyone's going to know what you're talking about, for one. And it's just a very, very small section of a bigger genre.
You should start a Twitch stream. I know that sounds really random, but you definitely should. I think you would be great on Twitch. Something tells me that, because, you know, you're a very good communicator, you have a lot of charisma. I think you would be really good on Twitch. I think you should start a Twitch channel. I really think you should. Sometimes
I feel like I don't think people would really want to listen to me for all that long.
Oh, no. I think you'd be great. Like, have you seen some of the beat making people on Twitch?
No. Well, I mean, I know of a few people that do them, but I haven't really tuned in, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah. I used to have a Twitch stream myself back in the day. I actually had to put it on hold because I just got too busy for it. But yeah, like, I think you'd be really good at it. I think you should consider it.
I definitely will.
There's just something that tells me, you know what? She'd be great on Twitch. Nydia, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for coming and doing this with me. I thought this conversation was awesome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Studio Chatter. Until next time, you all stay blessed and stay safe.